if you don't know what you want to do with your life, go start a business, because you learn so much about so many important things. You learn so much. You'll learn about how the economy works. You'll learn about human behavior. You will learn leadership. You will learn what you're good at, and you will also learn very quickly what you suck at. You will learn so many things about yourself and how the world works that even if you don't make a career out of running a business, there's just tremendous value and accomplishment in doing that. So that would be my advice to them. But at the end of the day, I want them to create positive change in the world and do something to make it a better place than how they found it.
Andy, welcome to Diners and Deals. We are not in a diner, but we are going to be discussing deals and all that stuff. But we did have breakfast at the famous S&G Diner in Lincoln Park. Did it disappoint?
No, it was legendary. It was everything you've said it would be and more. I wish we were there now. I'm still digesting the skillet that I had there.
Okay, yes. Did you go with the Athenian? I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Maria put you in the right direction. I've got some behind the scenes S&G stories, but that's for a later time. So anyway, everyone, I'm here with Andy Kvesic. Andy and I became friends. I think it's almost 4 years. It's 3 or 4 years into this journey. Andy is now the CEO of Aprio Legal. He's just an incredible person, an incredible entrepreneur. He has got quite the story about building, transacting, transforming. There's so much we're going to try to put in here. I have a feeling we're going to have to do like round 2 of this because we only have so much time today. But Andy, tell us about Aprio Legal.
Thanks, man. Thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be a guest on a podcast that I've listened to, kind of going through an exit and building a firm and being an entrepreneur. So it's an honor to like be on the pod now. But yeah, Aprio Legal, full service business law firm based in Scottsdale, Arizona. What's different about us is we have non-lawyer owners, and we also provide comprehensive professional services. So along with business law, we have an accounting firm, wealth planning practice, audit practice, business advisory practice, all combined and all complementary to the business law services that we already provide.
That's amazing. Is there anyone, in your opinion, that matches who you all are today in the United States that you can think of?
Not that I can think of. No, it's very cutting edge. We were the first law firm of our type to do what we did with the non-lawyer ownership. We're now the first firm to be acquired by another non-lawyer owned firm and combine all of these professional services under one roof. So very, very unique, very exciting.
All right. So let's talk about the whole journey. And I do want to spend quite a bit of time on the exit and then in what you're building in the future. But let's go way back. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Arizona, in Tucson.
Stop it. You're from Arizona?
I'm from Arizona.
I know this, but
so my parents are Croatian immigrants. They moved here in the mid 70s. I was born in the US, but I'm a product of the American dream. Like my parents were the classic immigrant story. They were political and economic refugees. They left communist Yugoslavia. They were coming to the United States, looking for a better life for themselves and their kids. And like many immigrants, they landed in Cleveland because my dad had a friend of a cousin that worked there.
Yep.
And so that was their first stop. After 2 years of that, it was too cold. So they ended up moving out to the desert. But I grew up in Arizona.
What took them to the desert? Do you recall?
I think it was just too cold. I mean, my parents were farmers. So they came from very, very frugal backgrounds. Neither of them had a formal education. To this day, my mother still doesn't read or write English. My dad speaks very broken English. And so they grew up in kind of a warm, hot farming environment. And so the winters in Cleveland were just not for them.
I get it. I have to tell you this little funny story. So as you know, my wife was a refugee, and she and her family came from Iran. And the kids have become very assimilated. Her mom, as you know, who lives with us a lot of the time, but a portion of her family settled in California. And because of the Persian enclave there, they've never learned how to read or really speak English. And the funniest thing is I've been to their house where they are watching Spanish telenovelas dubbed in Farsi. That is a real thing. That is a real thing. So born in Tucson, and what was growing up like for you? And at what stage did you think about, did law, the practice of law, coming into the equation? And with that same question, I'm curious to know, was the entrepreneurial bug something that you caught early or later?
So growing up, it's interesting. It's almost fascinating for me to look back on it, because in the moment as a child, you don't think about these things, but as an adult, as a parent, a husband, someone who has his own family, own career, now thinking back to how I grew up, it's just wild to me. So grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment. It was me, my 2 older sisters, and my parents. They started a business. It was a preschool in Tucson, and it was in a very bad part of town. Most of the kids that went there were on welfare. But again, my parents, like, they didn't have any connections to the community. English was their second language. Like, they had no money when they came to the US. And it was really a function of like the immigrant grind. I mean, that is really a thing.
Absolutely.
And so as I remember as a 8 or 9-year-old kid, in 2nd grade, going to the grocery store with my mom to get groceries that week for the preschool. At the checkout line, writing checks out to the cashier because my mom couldn't write. And so I think about my son now, who's in, 2nd, 3rd grade, like, he's not doing things like that. Right.
Yep.
But to me, it was just very normal at the time. I didn't think it was odd as a kid to be doing those things, or filling out my own paperwork, like as a 2nd or 3rd grader to go to school, right? Writing my own name and social security number on paperwork. It was just very normal to us.
Yeah.
And so I developed a sense of independence and resilience. And, when you don't have anything, you don't have a lot to lose. But again, this is every first generation American, like, kind of has that in them, where they just learned to do it through the grind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so tell me about then, as you became older, going to college. What did that process look like for you?
Yeah, interestingly, with my parents not having a formal education, they still had very, very high standards for us as kids. And I'll never forget, coming home from school, and I think this was in like junior high. And I remember some of my buddies talking about their parents giving them money for grades. They'd get $10 for an A and $9 for a B and $8 for a C. And I was always a high achiever. I always got good grades. I always got straight A's. And I remember coming home with my report card, and it was like 3 A's and an A- in science. And I was super proud. And I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, this is going to be a quick $40 from dad. I'm going to explain to him how these American kids do it. And I show him my report card. I'm super proud. And all he says was, "What happened in science?" And so that was always the standard for me. So going to college was never a question. Like, it was always expected that we would do that and succeed. And naturally, like, at the same time, considering what my parents went through to come to this country and everything that they achieved for us, there was never a point in my life where I could come home and just be a loser. Like, I could never look at my parents and just say, "Hey, I'm just going to mail it in." Right. So we always had very high standards for ourselves. But going into the legal profession was not something that I had ever considered. Never had lawyers in the family. Didn't have much advice from kind of a mentoring standpoint on the educational front, because no one in our family had gone to college. So it was just kind of on the fly figuring it out.
Sure. So where did you go to undergrad? Remind me.
University of Arizona.
Okay.
In Tucson, of course, because
of course.
Why would I leave town? My parents were like, "What do you mean you're going to go to school out of state? There's a school down the street. You're just going to go to school here in Tucson."
And what did you start studying when you enrolled? What did you think you were going to study?
Oh, I thought I was going to study aerospace engineering. Don't ask me why. I sat through one orientation and thought, I'm not doing this. So I walked over to the business college. That just seemed like it was more my speed. There was a lot more I could do. So, and my parents owned a business. And so
Sure.
studied business management at U of A.
Interesting. And then at what point in time did the idea of the practice of law come in for you? When did that first hit?
It was after college. So I graduated from U of A with a business degree. And again, at that point, still didn't feel like I had achieved much. And so I was working. I worked all through college because that's just what you do. Like that's just that's again, that farmer mentality. You're just going to work really hard and keep working.
Yep.
So worked all through college at a bank, continued working at the bank, and then thought to myself, there's more that I can do. And so the question is, do I get my MBA or do I go to law school? Not that I wanted to be a lawyer. I just thought getting a law degree would be harder. And it would open up more opportunities.
Interesting.
And so studied for the LSAT one summer on the fly, got into law school and just went for it.
And now, did you also work through law school?
Yes. Remarkably, I did. Yes. I got a job. I got a job in Newport Beach for an employment law attorney. And it was awesome. I got to do so much. She was at the tail end of her career. I was living down in Orange County. Like it was just such a good experience. But yeah, of course I worked during law school.
And so coming out of law school, what did you envision for yourself? That would be that did you have a vision of what you might do or what you might create? And what was the next step when you graduated?
Yes. So the original vision was I always wanted to be a prosecutor. I always wanted to work in public service. Part of that was because, again, being a product of the American dream, this was my way of giving back to a country that did so much for our family. Yeah. But what happened is I had some success in law school and then got an internship at a firm in Phoenix between my second and third year. And it was at a private law firm and great job doing litigation. They were paying me a lot of money to be an intern. They offered me a job before I was done with law school. They agreed to pay my bar dues. So I got to go through my third year of law school with an offer in my back pocket. So that was a no-brainer. So that's how I ended up doing litigation at a private law firm in Phoenix.
Yeah. And how long did that last?
Almost 10 years.
Wow.
I mean, I did everything you were supposed to do. Like I went there and worked really hard and moved up the ranks and was an associate, then got some, leadership positions running the summer program and then senior associate and then eventually becoming partner. And so again, in talking through this, it's like, it's just interesting to me because you continue to hit these benchmarks of what you're supposed to do. But looking back on it, I always felt like there was more to do. Like the goals were always so far out on the horizon. I never felt like I was hitting them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I've been reading a lot of Robert Fritz lately, and who was an author I did not know about until recently. And I think I've got a lot of the same wiring. I think a lot of us as founders have the same wiring, which is I want to get from here to there. Right. And so it's like, in my conception of myself, could be positive, could be negative. It doesn't really matter, but there's always this thing, this ideal that I'm shooting for. I've never really felt satisfied. What happens is that gap never closes. The ideal just moves up. You never, ever necessarily close the gap. And so you just keep driving. And along the way, you're not reflecting. You're achieving, you're challenging yourself, you're challenging yourself. Every once in a while, we have an opportunity to look up and say, what do I really want? What am I do? You have these critical moments. So something must have happened. You spent 10 years there building this incredible career. And was it the calling of why you actually, got into law in the first place? What happened that pivoted you finally to the public sector?
Yeah, it was the calling. It was something that I always wanted to do was to be a prosecutor. And I knew that if I didn't do it, there would always be this empty feeling and this regret. And so I went from being a partner at a law firm and doing very well financially to going to a government law office, which was a dump, and cutting my salary in half. And my paycheck was enough to cover diapers like for our first kid. But I was having so much fun. I was going on raids with SWAT teams. Like if you've seen the show The Wire on HBO, that was my life for like 2 years.
Amazing.
It was so fun. I put a bunch of bad guys in prison. I felt like I was like cleaning up the community. Like I felt like Elliot Ness. It was such a fun job.
I can see it. It's like I see it still on your face.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I went broke doing it, but it was, and I'll tell you that pivot that I made was the springboard for everything else that happened in my career. It's the primary reason why most clients wanted to hire me. There's a reason why people with really cool law jobs, a lot of them were former prosecutors. There's just something about it. When you've done that, when you've done a criminal jury trial, when you've sat in a courtroom closer than I am to you right now at this small table, when you've sat next to a murderer, right? A little breach of contract civil litigation lawsuit, like you don't really lose a lot of sleep over that.
That's right.
So great experience. Yeah, I'm so glad I did it. But going back to your point on, when do you achieve the goal? Like there's never, for founders, it's really about the journey. And you've said that before. There's never a time to spike the football.
That's right.
It's just, you just continue moving forward because that's what drives you. Looking back on it, you have those moments where you sort of pat yourself on the back, but there's also no time to do that because you're always on to the next thing.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so how long did you spend in public service?
I was there for 4 years, and in state government, I was fortunate enough to move up to some other more senior roles for other agencies, to be a general counsel, and learned how the practice of law works in government. And then from there, got recruited to go back into the private sector. And that's kind of where I got a taste for private equity, family office, that side of the practice of law that I hadn't quite experienced before.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So I look at my job now and I think back to all the other positions I had. They all led to this moment. They all gave me some piece that has contributed to what I do now. So working at a private law firm, you learn really the traditional practice of law and how law firms operate and how they make money and the pros and cons of it. Working in a government law office, you learn how to build teams with zero budget, and you learn about bureaucracy and how to navigate politics and working for elected officials and working for the state when your constituents are taxpayers. And then you go into the private family office role where you're managing outside counsel and seeing some of the inefficiencies there and how expensive the law practice is and how fractured it is and how difficult it is for the client. Harnessing all those things into one role now was like incredibly valuable. But working for the family office was great because working with true entrepreneurs that are not lawyers, people that are not afraid to deploy capital, that know how to use capital strategically. And rather than being a legal advisor that just assesses risk and tells you all the things that can go wrong, when you're working for a highly successful family office, you need to find a way to get them over the finish line. They are not hiring you to write a memo on all the things that could get screwed up if we do this deal.
That's right.
Okay. They're hiring you to get the deal done.
That's right.
And assess risk. And so I learned so much about how to manage risk, how to actually care about the things that really matter in business, and realize that some risk is okay. In fact, in certain circumstances, a lot of risk is okay because it could end up being tremendously profitable. And that was a skill set that I hadn't developed up until that point. So for my entrepreneurial career, it was just a tremendous experience.
Yeah, I understand, all of that. And I find it, quite honestly, in the work that I do, so difficult to find lawyers that have that mentality when I am trying to execute a buy and build, right? And as an entrepreneur, I mean, you think about, we're staking it all. We're not working for anyone, we're working for ourselves. We're building this. Like we are staking it all. I'm looking for someone. I'm looking for someone to really help me, not get in my way. And it's difficult, I would say, to find really, really good legal professionals that can support the entrepreneurial journey. They're out there, but I would say it's more the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, it is rare. It is rare. And it's the foundation for why we, went in and built Radix Law and then became Aprio Legal. It's the foundation for the way I think now, for the way I advise clients now, for the types of clients that we attract. It's just a different way to be more of an advisor, a counselor, a business partner, someone that helps people become more successful versus someone that sort of comes in and tries to keep people out of harm's way.
So here you are working with the family office. And what then takes you and propels you on the entrepreneurial path?
This is one of those other pivots. And again, I think back on it, like there's no rhyme or reason to my career path. I never set out to do these things. And I've always been this way. I've always just gone with my gut. And so always had an entrepreneurial bug, always had sort of this creative part of my brain. Every role that I was in, whether it was the private law firm or in government or the family office, I was constantly identifying things that could be improved, ways to make things better. And I couldn't stop because that's just how my brain works. But at the same time, I had every lawyer's dream job, which is in-house counsel, general counsel. You're not billing hours anymore. You have one client. No one in their right mind would go back to a law firm, a private law firm, to bill hours again. But I was presented with this really unique opportunity in 2021 when Arizona changed the rules on who could own law firms. I was presented with this opportunity to acquire a law firm with some non-lawyer business partners. And at first, like most people, I thought that's crazy because non-lawyers can't own law firms. But then as I thought about it, it occurred to me that there's a lot of things that could be fixed in the legal profession. And so this was an opportunity for me to take all of these ideas that I had, all of these things that I thought could be improved in the legal profession, and build my own firm and do it the way that I thought we could do it to increase value to clients, to build a better business, to build a better place for attorneys to work, and to harness other professional services that relate to the practice of law. So that's what got me out of the family office.
How did they find you? This group of investors with this idea?
They were colleagues in the community. A buddy of mine called me and said,
Hey,
hey, dude. Yeah. Kind of like you called me.
Yep.
Hey, dude, we should do this. It's probably over a beer. And that was it. And they thought, you're the guy. There's not really anyone else that gets it. We don't really trust anyone else to do it. And we believe in you. And so to a certain extent, they were betting on me, which was awesome. And so the idea that I could go into a business and like hand select our business partners to run this law firm was pretty incredible. The funniest part of the story is as we had kind of our base ownership group that we wanted to bring on, and they all came from different industries and would offer a different expertise. But we also were going out to other individuals in the market that we thought would drive business and revenue to the firm. And some of them didn't quite get it, which is understandable. A lot of people still don't get this concept. And so they were 50-50 on whether they wanted to be part of it, but we were moving towards the acquisition. We were going to acquire this firm. And we did it. And that day came and went, and we took over the firm. And then we started getting calls from like 3 or 4 people that said, hey, about that law firm thing, we're interested in being involved. And it's like, guys, we didn't hear from you. We've already moved forward. And a few people were like really upset that they wanted to be involved and didn't get to be a part of it. But that's how it went.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Now you were almost taking, some would say, like a double risk. It was almost like doubling down entrepreneurially, because the ABS program at that time was also very young, if I'm not mistaken at the time. Which, like, how many ABSs are there today in Arizona? How many entities?
There's close to 150.
When you decided to do this with your partners, how many were there?
We were the 5th license to ever be approved. We were the first one that was a traditional multi-lawyer full-service law firm. And so there was no playbook for what we were doing. And in fact, at our approval hearing, I'll never forget, there's a committee that decides these things, and it's a public body, and it's almost like going to a city hall or, a town council meeting. When it came time for one of the committee members to make a motion to approve our application, the room went dead silent. And mind you, I had, I had resigned from the family office in March.
Wow.
And so here we are in August, September. I spent the entire summer working on this deal, everything on the line, like savings, 401k, all of it was like on the line for this firm. And we're at the moment where we're waiting to get our approval and the room is dead silent. And not a single person made a motion to approve this idea that we were going to be a traditional law firm. That's all we were doing. There wasn't anything exciting about it.
Right.
But the committee at the time was so new, they didn't know what to do.
They didn't know to signal for
and you can watch the tape. I'm sitting there and for 10 seconds, it's dead silence. And I'm looking around like it's over. Like this is the whole career. Everything's done. It's going to evaporate. Someone grumbled something and a few other people grumbled something else. And the chair of the committee said, okay, we're going to recommend you for approval. And I grabbed my stuff and got out of that room like as fast as I could.
Now go back 6 months and you come home, say, guess what, honey? How was that?
Well,
and let's also talk about the support, whether you're male or female founder, of your life partner in this journey.
Yes. So my wife, her background is in accounting and audit, right? So everything to her has to add up to a certain number. And so before we got the license for 6 months, that whole summer, she's looking at me like, what are we doing? Why is this taking so long? She didn't get it. She doesn't have that entrepreneurial brain that I do. And me, I'm like, it's going to work, right? No fear of failure. Like the solution to everything was work harder. Like it's going to get done. So it made perfect sense to me. It made no sense to her. And so, yeah, I mean, it was important. My wife, Danny, is incredibly valuable in the sense that she's always like a gut check. She always gives me the logic that I need, because sometimes I'm very illogical in my goals. At the same time, like, I don't think you can do extraordinary things by being reasonable, but you do need that balance. You do need that person to look at you and say, hey, like, come back down to earth. We get that you're a visionary. We get that you don't care about failing, but have you thought about these practical things that might happen?
Yep.
And so she was a great just sounding board for that. Continues to be like my biggest advocate, but also my biggest critic.
That's great. In a way, I think sometimes our spouses or partners are filling the same role in a way that your parents did.
100%. That
Right.
just occurred to me. Yeah. I mean, again, it's the 3 A's and an A minus, and she's looking at, what happened in science. Like, why'd you get an A minus here?
That's right.
Yeah. That's a great point.
It's a good check and balance. So let's fast forward a bit. You scaled the business, the firm, very successfully. And some things have happened in the industry. I want to pivot to talking about at what point in time you thought about perhaps partnering with private equity, going through this transaction. But let's first talk about some things that have been happening in this industry. I'm still not sure that many people understand what is happening in the legal industry in the United States. You're seeing it from all angles. You've been through it. And there's the ABS, there's what we call an LSO or an MSO. There's a hybrid structure. There's no, similar to what happened in alternative structures, like in the CPA space, or the AICPA basically said, here's the template. There's no national body that oversees this. So can you just talk for a minute about, what is happening in terms of private non-lawyer investment in legal businesses and law firms in the United States? Can you talk about that a little bit, and then talk about what then had you start to think about scaling with even more, outside investment, and then preparing for and going through a transaction?
Yeah. So it all starts with, for the non-lawyer listeners, there's a rule that exists across the country. It's an ethical rule that says lawyers can't work at a law firm that's owned by non-lawyers. So in other words, at every law firm, the business has to be owned by lawyers. So what Arizona did, which was very innovative in 2021, is the Supreme Court deleted that rule. So it opened the door for these things called alternative business structure law firms, or ABS law firms. And Arizona was the only state where you could do that. In Washington, D.C., there was a similar rule that effectively allows non-lawyer lobbyists to work at law firms, but it's limited in what they can do and how they can share profits. Arizona was the only state where non-lawyers could own law firms, could profit from law firms. It didn't allow non-lawyers to practice law. It didn't allow disbarred attorneys to come and practice law, or for the non-lawyers to boss the attorneys around. But all it allowed was this non-lawyer ownership. And so then that transitions to, okay, well, now there can be non-lawyer investment in law firms. And so that's how, in the private equity space, people have become a lot more interested in the legal industry, which has been, since we've been around since the colonial era. I mean, it's been untouched by private equity for over 200 years. The legal industry does not change often. I mean, the biggest disruption, I think the last time occurred in the 80s when they went from letters or legal size paper to letter size paper.
And he's not joking about that.
Like, there were committees to kind of discuss, what are we going to do, because the papers are going from 8.5 by 14 to 8.5 by 11, and we got to get committees involved and commissions and pass legislative bills. So our industry doesn't change a lot. So it just doesn't get disrupted. And the moment you come in with this novel idea, you're going to get a lot of attention, a lot of feedback, and a lot of criticism for doing what's been done in every other profession to date.
And in many other countries, there is outside investment in law firms. There are publicly traded law firms in the UK,
right,
as an example.
Yeah, and there's a number of different reasons why you'd want non-lawyers to get involved. In Arizona, the vision that the Supreme Court had was, hey, well, this is a good thing because, not every brilliant person is a lawyer. Some non-lawyer business people are really smart, and they can help you run a business and promote innovation and increase advances in technology and investment in the firm. It also increases access to justice. And there's a lot of good reasons why you could have a non-lawyer ownership. In some cases, you just want to give your 20-year devoted paralegal some equity in the firm, and that should be okay. And so there's a lot of good reasons to do it. And firms,
like in every other business.
Exactly.
In the United States.
Right. And so firms do it for different reasons. Some do it because they just want a private source of capital and to have an aligned business partner. Whereas before, your source of capital as a law firm was a bank, and your lender is not exactly sitting at the strategic brainstorm table with you, right? If you miss a loan payment, they're going to come take your computers and equipment. If you have a capital source that's a partner, that's an equity owner, okay, they're figuring out how to grow the business together and how to become more profitable together. So there's different reasons to do it. I did it, and we did it because I always felt like there was a place to have comprehensive professional services under one roof. And having worked in those different roles, especially for this family office, what really spawned this idea was, I will never forget, we were sitting in a conference room, and it was like a semi-annual meeting because the principal, again, very successful, massive org chart, but we were sitting at a table, and the wealth planning team from, blue chip firm is sitting there, and the outside estate planning attorney is there, and the internal bookkeeper is there, and the outside accountant from this other big four firm is there, and the controller from internally is there, and I'm the general counsel. There's 10 of us sitting around the table, talking about how to buy a house in Texas that was going to be like the son's, frat house for college. And you can hear the meter running. And I'm looking around thinking, this is so inefficient.
So inefficient. Yes.
All of these people should work at the same place. And we should have had this meeting together under the same roof. And the principal should have walked in from his jet, signed the paperwork, and then gone back to whatever.
We came up with the solution. We've already engineered this, right, very efficiently for you. And we're getting this done for you.
Exactly.
Right. That's right.
So I thought there's got to be a better way to do this. Why can't all these people work at one place? And so that was the vision. That was the genesis for starting our ABS law firm, is having a business law firm at the center of the spokes, this wheel of professional services, which could include accounting and wealth planning and tax and real estate and all these other things that successful entrepreneurs need that currently they have to go to 6 different offices to deal with. All those people should work at the same company. And so that's what started it. And that's what we eventually were working towards. And that's what we became.
Talk to me for a second before we get into what you became, what then prompted the next move and what you're building now. Let's also just pivot for a second to this other thing that's emerging, the MSO or the LSO, this other way to bring private capital into firms. What does that look like?
Yeah. So building the firm, I had all these ideas, grand ideas of what we wanted to be in 5 to 10 years. We were never positioning it to sell it. But in the meantime, you're still running a business, right? You're still running a law firm and all the stuff that goes along with that. And like the other entrepreneurs and founders on your show, like it's a grind. Like it's tough and it's not for everyone. So figuring that out, was another challenge. So we were never positioning it to sell it, but a great opportunity came from another firm that had the same vision of ours, which is Aprio, and they were a large accounting firm. They were also an ABS, but they didn't have the legal part. And so ended up meeting with them. We were telling the same story from different sides of a coin. It was just a natural fit. And trust me, we turned down so many offers. We got so many weird phone calls from people. Like I'll never forget. One of the proposals was that we should become a windshield repair legal practice, and we just said no thanks. But we got so many calls and so many offers, and we were just never interested in working for someone else. But we ended up finding the right partner at the right time.
And so sometimes these things hit you, right? And many people that are listening to this, they may not know, there's a small firm called KPMG that has also decided. Now, they already have 3,700 lawyers at KPMG Legal outside of the United States, and they've decided they're coming to the US as well, right? Because they've put this type of offering together, right, for and many other jurisdictions and globally. So this makes sense. This is what clients actually want, right? And so Aprio comes to you, the KPMG, I don't know, obviously that's happening, et cetera. And you could continue to go down the journey that you're going down with your partners, or you could think about, I believe they're backed by Charles Bank.
Correct.
If I'm not correct, brilliant investors. Used to run the Harvard endowment from my recollection. Incredible buy and build. I've had the opportunity to meet through you, Richard, and the team, and you've got an incredible team that's executing this. But this hits you, and I think it probably went pretty fast. You were not preparing for an exit.
We were not. And looking back, I wish I would have. We probably, could have gotten a lot more dough. But again, things happen for a reason, and the world just works itself out. That's and right. It's probably better that way. We weren't preparing for an exit. We weren't positioning this to sell, but we found people that understood our vision and that we knew could take us in a very short time where we wanted to be in 10 years. And so it was that I had that moment where you look yourself in the mirror and think, okay, am I just going to do this myself for the pride of saying I did it and I'm not going to work for anyone else and I want to be able to be independent and leave work and I want? Or do you really want to do something extraordinary? Yeah. And so this was the opportunity to find some very like-minded people that, again, also wanted to be extraordinary with us.
Yeah. So let's talk about then the transaction, because you were not getting, no one was prepping you. You weren't prepping. I remember you calling me somewhere along the line, and I offered a few pieces of advice. And I also said, listen to listen to the podcast as well. We're telling a lot of these stories, and and you will be in the book. We're launching a book in probably October called The Owner's Manual: If, When, and How to Sell Your Business to Private Equity. To take a lot of these lessons from across industries and from various perspectives to try to equip founders with this knowledge. Tell me about some of the shock and awe and the surprises and the navigation. What was this like end to end, from when you decide, there was the initial meeting, but from when you're decided we're going to ride this rocket ship together to close, what was that timeline?
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 months.
That's fast.
So we went fast. Yeah, I was not prepared for it. Went into it again, was naive, but learned a lot. And again, it was another situation where I went with my gut. It felt right. I knew I was built for it. I didn't fully appreciate how much it would extract out of me, both professionally, personally, emotionally.
Yep.
I fully understand now why people will tell you how many exits they have. And they sort of wear that as a badge of honor, because before I didn't fully appreciate it. It's like telling someone how many times you've bought and sold a house. It's like, who cares? But now that I've gone through a transaction, you fully understand what's involved and how challenging it can be, because you're dealing with financials and going through due diligence and dealing with operational transitions and rebranding and getting your employees on board and getting your clients on board. And you still have a day job of running your own firm.
And God forbid, especially in this day and age, that your numbers, your performance slips as you are going through the gauntlet.
Right. And again, with no playbook, going through that every single day, effectively working six jobs at once, and not even considering the fact that, at 5 o'clock, I've got to go coach Little League. And these 8 and 9-year-old kids don't really care that I'm going through a transaction, right? Like, we're playing you got to teach these kids how to hit a ball the opposite field on the outside corner of the plate.
That's right.
They don't care about all the grind that I'm going through.
And it's typically based off of, in most deals, this is based also off of a letter of intent. And in many cases, especially with small businesses, there's no breakup. If they leave you at the altar, there's no breakup fee.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So
this is all promissory.
There's a lot on the line. So how did I deal with this situation? Yes, I did talk to you. You were great and have been.
And others, but I think, and we talked about a lot of the emotional, there's the stuff, and then there's the wave and the waves of emotion as well. But anyway, whatever you want to help other people like you that are going to walk into this without your advice, what do you want them to hear?
I had those moments. I would work out in the mornings, and as I would walk back, I live about a mile from the gym. So as I would walk back after my workouts, I would intentionally listen to these podcasts. And that was kind of my moment to really, it was very soothing and therapeutic in the sense that the other people on your podcast are all very normal people. And there was something very comforting about, yes, they've done extraordinary things, but they're all very normal people, and everyone was going through the same stuff and the same challenges.
Right.
And so that there was comfort in knowing that this is pretty normal. Everyone's going through the same type of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you've got to show up to work and continue to be a leader and continue to, run the organization and focus on the transaction and be a dad and be a husband and be the managing partner and be a lawyer and advisor to your clients. So for 4 months, it took everything out of me that I possibly had.
Yeah. Yeah.
It also demonstrated to me that I was capable of more.
Oh, you've got it. Oh, you and I talked about this, Andy. You've got it. And we're going to talk about, we're also going to talk about what's next. I remember having a conversation with you that I want others to hear this, right? And if there's anything you want to share about bringing, I'd like to know, because you do have partners, right? You have your business partners in the firm, the employees. At what stage do you fully bring everyone, make this known? There's no right or wrong playbook for this. Now, in your case, right? You've had investors, you've got partners. So there's like those that need to know, those that don't need to know. But, thinking about, those that joined you, yes, they did join you to do something exceptional, to do something unique and different, to go through the entrepreneurial journey. And a lot of people want to continue to stay on that founder journey, that entrepreneurial journey. And so now they're thinking about, oh, well, now we're going to go join this large private, like this is a departure from what they're doing. And so there's all this alignment building that you have to do. Can you talk about what that, then there's all the diligence and the financials and running the day to day. Can you talk anything you want to share about that, how you manage that portion of the journey?
Yeah. So what founders and entrepreneurs will appreciate is no one cares about your company as much as you do. Like your employees just don't look at it the same way as you do. And not everyone is a visionary. And a lot of people don't want that job. And it's totally understandable. There are many days where I just wish I was an employee.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So,
Yep.
so getting them to buy into that vision is always going to be a challenge because again, they don't look at it the way that you do. But I let the team know when it was well in advance, but it was after LOI stage, because what happened was we signed an LOI, which was just, nothing had been finalized. We hadn't finalized the deal docs. We were just going to commence due diligence, but the press got a hold of it. And the LOI was very clear that nothing had been finalized, that we were working towards a deal. Well, someone from a huge news outlet gets it and says, Andy's firm has merged with Aprio Legal. Yeah. So I start getting calls from people panicking, saying, you sold the firm, you didn't tell us, what are you doing? Like there was a lot of relationships that I lost because people thought that I had betrayed them.
Yep.
So that was difficult. So managing.
That's unique. Like what happened to you in this case in a private to private transaction, that getting out, I mean, that is a highly irregular, unique event. That's a lot to deal with.
Yeah. And so we can't control what a journalist says or the words that they use. At the same time, I mean, we were, in the Wall Street Journal. And so not going to call a reporter to say retract it. We haven't closed yet. So, but getting the team on board, was a challenge because again, they're all traditional lawyers. They've worked in a certain type of business setting for so long, and we were doing something very revolutionary. And these are people's, you're playing with their livelihoods. I mean, this is how they feed their families. This is how they make a living. And I fully appreciated that. And I was sympathetic to kind of the emotions that they were going through. And so I learned just to be very, very patient with all of them and not get fired up because someone didn't agree with what my vision, my goals that are so set on the horizon. I learned that it's okay if not everyone sees the world the same way that you do. But at the same time, like in my heart, in my soul, I knew that this was the right move for us and for everyone at the firm. I knew that it was going to be a better outcome for us on the other side.
Yep. And everyone has agency. And what I typically ask my partners and employees to say, listen, you trusted me for this long, give me the benefit of the doubt and let's see how it goes. The other thing that I will often say to founders that are going through this for the first time, you talk about the people that have like multiple exits, like people have been on the show, friends of ours, people you've met. I guess I have to put myself in that category. I always say this to people and they look at me sideways. I'm like, listen, please don't take offense to this, but I want you to prepare yourself for 10% involuntary attrition. Not because, it is like, I don't want you to lose anybody, but there's just going to be certain people along the way, not because of anything you have done, that they just have a view of private equity. They wanted to be with a founder-led business. They wanted to be part of whatever it was that was motivating them. Something has changed, and that change can be great, but for whatever reason, it's just not for them. There's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. And so I just kind of tell people to like emotionally prepare for that, just to say that you don't have a magic wand. You can't control anyone, be patient, but just ask them for some grace, right? And ask them to give you some time so that they can hopefully see what you see on the other side.
Yeah. It's the struggles that entrepreneurs go through, that leaders, that founders, that CEOs of organizations, that they have to deal with, and that they bottle up, because you've got to show up to work and you've got to lead. And if they see you nervous, if they see you struggling and panicking, it's not going to be a good situation.
Yeah. I remember probably texting with you because I didn't want to bother you. And I knew that official closing date, not as reported, but in reality, was coming up. And I don't know that we spoke about it, but I do remember texting you a little love note and saying, I know how exhausted you must be. And you need a break. And what is most important is that for the first few weeks, as hard as it's going to be, as much as you need to shut down and recover, how you show up in the first 30 days after a transaction matters so much, right? I need you to dig deep. I need you to do the things that most others cannot do, and be even more present after the close.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I'll never forget, because you do need to show up, but I'll share a little story that I haven't shared with anyone on the planet, but we're on the Diners and Deals podcast. So why not tell the world now? As most people that have gone through a transaction have experienced, there's typically code names associated with the deal. And that's because you're under confidentiality. You don't want certain people to know. And so the code name for our deal was Stevie Nicks. And so for 4 straight months, I would get 100 emails a day, Stevie Nicks, Stevie Nicks, Stevie Nicks. And our closing date was May 1st, and closing came and went. And we did, the virtual call, and we celebrated, and everyone's super happy. And it's 11 o'clock, and I, came and went. So I go, like I do once a week, I drove to my favorite sandwich shop, Rinaldi's, to go get an Italian sub, because like the world goes on, right?
Sure does.
And so, I'm getting my sandwich, pulling out of the parking lot, and I think this would be a good time to put on my favorite song by Stevie Nicks, Stand Back, which is a great song, by the way.
It is a great
song. I did not even get out of the parking lot. I put the song on and I just started crying. And I had to pull over and park. And for like 4 minutes, I was just sitting in my car bawling. And it wasn't tears of sadness. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was just a lot of, I think, built up emotion, everything that I had bottled up for 4 months to like make this happen, right? To get this, everything that I had built, everything that I had worked towards, like my whole life, my whole career. You can't express how you're feeling in the moment because you're just trying to get the deal done. So for those 4 minutes, it's like when it all came out.
Yep.
And then, stop, song ended. I put it on repeat, obviously, but like got it together, went back to the office and like just went back to work.
Yeah.
And to this day, like every time I put that song on, I'll get a little bit choked up.
Yeah.
But I'm sure many founders that have gone through an exit will appreciate that. Like there's always some release that has to happen. Otherwise you'll go crazy.
You'll go crazy.
And I've probably, I'm not an emotional guy. I've probably, cried less than like 5 times in my life. So that was like
I believe it. I believe that. I know this about you and I believe that about you. And I can't tell you how much I thank you for sharing that. Like if anything that you could share, Andy, that's first, you being vulnerable enough to do that is incredible. And, it's, I'm not surprised that it was a very, rare occasion for, I do remember us talking about, that first 30 days, but I remember saying, dude, you got to go do something. Like you got to shake this loose. And I learned a lot of that from the work that I've done in trauma therapy and trauma recovery. I remember reading, Pete Walker's books when I first started to understand the mind and how animals shake off things. Like if a gazelle is attacked by a lion, and it will fawn, right, and play dead, right, and so we see this happen, and the lion won't know that it's dead. It will carry it back, right, to its lair, and it will come out of the fawn state. And we've seen this, right, in like nature videos. Think of how it shakes, and it shakes it off, and it shakes it off,
Right.
and it shakes it off, and it is clearing out all that stuff, right? And it's incredible that you had that clearing of it. Now, had this ever happened to you, like maybe the first time you did in your work career, like maybe the first time you had a murder trial, like was this the first time you've had this type of, like, you needed this type of visceral release in something related to work? Is there another time?
I can't think of another time where it professionally, like something drew that out of me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget it.
It took this.
Yeah. And I again consider myself like high achiever, had done a lot in my career, had been through a lot of stressful environments, worked at the highest levels of state government and private, law firm settings. Did not think that it would take that much out of me, but it did. And I survived. And like all founders that go through it, like you have some scars, but if you look at the scars that you have, there's always a story that kind of goes along with it. And at the time it's painful, but you sort of look at them with fond memories of how you got that scar and the fact that you survived.
Absolutely. And so I want to end with a few things. I want to spend a few minutes on just a few things. So I think one of the things that's really interesting is it's like, I want to talk about now what you all are going to be doing at Aprio Legal. And I assume part of that is just capturing the enormous amount of pent up organic growth that existed within the broader firm, as well as potentially doing acquisitions. And as you think about doing acquisitions, one of the things that I still, every time I close a deal with a founder, I can't believe I did it. I can't believe that they trusted me, that they got through the gauntlet. These are the things that I always, when I really reflect on it, I can't believe actually how many deals I've done with other founders because I know what it takes. The other thing that I always say to them, and that is part of my, it's just honest and it's part of my toolkit, I am them. Right. And I have been through it. And whatever they are thinking or feeling, I hope they tell me about it, but I just want to make sure that they've got the emotional support to go through a process. Cause like in your lived experience, and it's part of what makes incredible serial acquirers with other founders, because you now have this, you have lived it. And this is something that operators that haven't gone through just can't relate to. And so if you do decide as part of this to do acquisitions, you have incredible advantage because of who you are and what, and how you've scaled and having gone through this yourself.
Yeah. I mean, founders are inherently very independent and they're programmed to be that way and to be the leader and to be the guy or the gal that's, at the top. And so you're not programmed to seek help. You're not programmed to kind of share your struggles. So having people like you in my corner was awesome. Like, I'll just tell you've earned your wings, dude, for whatever you've done. Like you helped me tremendously.
Oh, that's very kind.
And
I was just happy to like, if you needed me, you could text me. It's a thank you for saying that, but it's anyway. Keep going. Talking about you, not me.
Yeah. Yeah. And looking back, like zero regrets for everything that people say about private equity firms. Like most of them have not really experienced it firsthand like I have. And to have a strategic partner like Charles Bank, like an elite private equity firm, who, by the way, is not showing up to our law office telling us how to practice law. Like they introduce me to other CEOs that are in their portfolio companies. They sit down and talk about, hey, how do we grow this thing? How do we 10x this thing over the next few years? Like that's the kind of private equity support that I have.
You partnered, well, the team at Aprio is incredible, and Charles Bank is top decile. in terms of how they work with founders, scale and grow businesses.
Yeah.
I mean,
super lucky. And it's funny, like you'll always have, I read the man in the arena quote by Teddy Roosevelt often. It kind of gets me back to neutral because you're always going to have critics. You're always going to have people that never did it and that point at you and say, oh, the firm was failing. He got bailed out. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's in over his head. And so I read that often. And if you haven't read it, for anyone that's listening, like read The Man in the Arena. It's an incredible quote by Theodore Roosevelt. But
I cite it all the time. It's actually part of it. A requote of it is at Samson and our purpose, values, and our underlying values and ambitions. We say we are from the stands, not the arena. Right. I'm sorry. I just said that the wrong way. We are from the arena, not the stands. Go ahead and edit. No, don't edit. I'm just tired and jet lagged. Andy doesn't. But we are from the arena, not the stands. Right. We are operators. Right. We just choose to now help other founders do what we've done. But we've got the stripes, and yeah, that quote is so important to me, and I go back to it again and again and again. And it's that grit and that resilience. So now in the last few minutes, let's talk about the next 3 years. What's the vision and how are you going to get there?
So the vision is we grow this thing to be a national law firm and we become, I mean, we already are this, but the first firm that's offering all of these comprehensive professional services under one roof, but to really have a national platform where our successful business owner clients can come to us and we advise them on all of the things that they need to be successful. And so I'm optimistic that within a couple of years, we'll be up to 50, maybe 100 lawyers. It's going to be difficult to get the entire legal industry behind this because, again, some of them still wish we had that legal size paper, 8.5 by 14. Mm-hmm. But I'm certain that, if it's via this podcast or however, we will find the right people in other markets that understand what we're doing. And we're already getting calls from people that understand what we're doing, understand how this creates value for our clients, how this is a better outcome for the industry, that will partner with us, that will want to be part of what we're building at Aprio Legal. And again, maybe it's naive, but it's how I'm wired. Like, we will get there. We will change the world once again. We will revolutionize something that's never been revolutionized. And I'll look back on it and think we haven't achieved much, and we will continue on to the next thing. But yeah, we will continue to do extraordinary things. And I'm excited to see like how, if this is how I leave my mark on the legal profession, that we changed it for the better, then so be it. But I'm 100% optimistic on what we're going to build out and how successful it's going to be for everyone involved.
I have no doubt that you're going to achieve everything and more that you've set out to do, and that your humility and who you are as a person, it won't even register to you. So I'm going to ask one final question, and I'm going to go back to something else. And I just want you to reflect on this and see if there's anything that you want to share. As you are bringing up the kids and they are now living in the current environment that we live in, you have had a lot of success. You're going to continue to have success, but generationally and from your origin, you probably feel that they still have quite a sense of duty in terms of legacy and what their grandparents sacrificed to bring you here and to create this opportunity. And it is difficult because they are now growing up in a very different environment with a different means pool than what you had. How do you balance these things, and how do you make sure that you're passing down what you want to them?
It's a great question. I think everyone has a duty to leave the world a better place than you found it. And that's the message for my kids. I think about this a lot. Like, what would I tell my kids to do if they were just clueless and didn't have much direction? And giving this some thought, if if you don't know what you want to do with your life, go start a business, because you learn so much about so many important things. You learn so much. You'll learn about how the economy works. You'll learn about human behavior. You will learn leadership. You will learn what you're good at, and you will also learn very quickly what you suck at. You will learn so many things about yourself and how the world works that even if you don't make a career out of running a business, there's just tremendous value and accomplishment in doing that. So that would be my advice to them. But at the end of the day, I want them to create positive change in the world and do something to make it a better place than how they found it.
I love it. Andy, thank you so much for taking this time. I took up a little bit more than I said I would, but I had a lot of things I wanted to ask you. Thank you so much for joining Diners and Deals, and we can't wait to see where you are 3 years from now.
Been a pleasure. Thanks, brother.
Thank you. Bye.